Hello, students, and welcome back to Chapter 2 of A Cow Called Boy. This one is entitled An A-Grade Report. My name is Miss Johnson, and this novel is written by C. Everard Palmer. We are using the 1985 edition by Macmillan Caribbean, so any references to pages as well as lines would be from the 1985 edition. So let's begin. In chapter 2, this chapter serves to establish the reason for Josh's very close relationship with Boy, and it endears the bulkin to the teacher and the students. Remember that the first chapter introduced us to the characters and the setting, and this chapter helps us to appreciate the relationships between the characters. When we are reading or writing a novel, if we do not spend time with understanding why characters not only behave the way that they do, but they are in the relationships they are in, we will have no personal investment in the story. And so this chapter establishes why both of these chapters, or Josh and Boy, are so very much in love with one another. So Josh begins his summer report. Now, Josh stands at the front of his class and he gives his report. He tells his eager classmates that Tom Kelly gifted Boy to him in June of this year. He explains the Boy was a sickly calf and that Mr. Kelly didn't want to be bothered by him. So Josh explained further that he cared for Boy and nursed him back to health. He fed the calf milk until he was able to eat grass. Then Boy soon gathered his strength and would run up and down the yard. Josh describes him as frisky and all, with his tail waving like a flag. So this again is another form of figurative language that was a metaphor. We also learned that Boy was not the plump and happy calf that we see now at the end of August, the beginning of September. He was born in June, and Boy also brought a little bit of happiness into Josh's life. Josh explains that Boy got sick when he was 2 weeks old. He says that Boy had a fever for 3 days and Josh feared that he would die. Josh stayed with him day and night and nursed Boy with dry grass to sleep in, hot Jack-in-the-Bush tea to drink, which is, a bush tea, and Josh rubbed Boy down with liniment or ointment so that Boy could recover quickly. Here we learn about how much Josh cared for this bulkin. And remember, we learned in the last chapter that Josh had lost his father around the same time that he got Boy. And he does not have any brothers or sisters the same way that Boy doesn't have a mother. So it's very important for us to understand that this is the relationship between the boy and the cow, or the bulkin, and why this relationship is so strong and important. So Josh is very protective of Boy. Josh's classmates were not only impressed, but they oohed and they ahed. And Josh was insulted when a little boy named Tobias, he said, he wanted to make fun of Boy's name because the cow's name was Boy. And so Josh retorted, "Your name's not so pretty." Josh then explained that he and Boy were literally tied at the hip. That means that they went everywhere together. They went to the fields, they went to the store, they went to the woodlands, and they even went to the river when Josh went fishing. Now, Boy is so attached that he tries to go into Josh's house and Mr. Ben Watson's store. And Josh notes that Mr. Watson says that Boy will dirty the store. It is a claim that Boy insists is not true. He tells Mrs. Anthony that Boy is not only good, but he is well trained and well behaved. And here we see that we have the first mention of a particular person, which would be Mr. Ben Watson. It's important that his name is mentioned here, and we'll note why. Also, please note the way that Josh responds or he acts when he mentions Mr. Watson's name. That's also very important. Now, Boy does exciting tricks. So Josh makes Boy do tricks. He feeds him guinea grass and he makes him eat on command. And this made the children excited. He took coarse salt from his pocket. He stood atop the desk and commanded Boy to beg for the salt. He says, "Beg, boy, beg, beg." And Boy stood on his hind legs, which are called haunches, and he begged for the salt. He ate it directly from Josh's hands, and everyone was astonished and enjoyed the experience. Even Mrs. Anthony was impressed and thought about the impression having an animal in the class had on the children. This is another important thing to note, simply because what happens is she, as an adult, is paying attention to just how engaged the children are in learning. And this is also comparative to the way that teachers try to bring things that children would be familiar with into the classrooms so that the children themselves can be more interested in the lesson. Now, we learn a little bit of information about Boy here. Boy likes order and discipline. So in the photo, you can see that I really tried to get pictures of the children lined up. Again, these pictures are from Canva. Josh gets permission from Mrs. Anthony to allow the students to meet Boy, and she agrees. At first, the children stampede or run wildly, and I want us to pay very close attention to the way that Mr. Palmer uses words like ambled, stampede, and kind of mosey. He uses words like that because these are words that kind of speak to the way that animals, in particular four-legged animals like cows and horses, move, okay? And this kind of gives you an idea of how quickly the children ran towards Boy in their excitement. However, Boy was frightened. Then Josh told them that they needed to line up because Boy does not like confusion. The students oblige, or they agree, and they gather around to touch Boy and admire him. So they form an orderly line. Now, we learned the difference between the two types of cow. The students were excited. They enjoyed meeting Boy. They always saw cows in the field, and it was something that always happened, but seeing the cow in school was a novelty. I want us to just take note of the way that commonplace and novelty are antonyms. Brad and Josh have an argument over whether Boy is a cow or a bulkin, and Mrs. Anthony confirms that Boy is indeed a bulkin. Finally, Mrs. Anthony thanks Josh and asks him to take Boy out of class, and the children sing hip hip hooray. This here is the second example of of alliteration that is used, and it kind of gives us an idea or a sense of just how jubilant the students are at Josh's presentation. The next thing that we need to be concerned about is foreshadowing. Now, foreshadowing is a literary technique in which the author gives the reader a hint of what will happen next in the novel. This can be in the form of an event that transpires that may hint at something bigger or similar happening, a word, phrase, or exchange of dialogue. A lot of times you have characters that say, "Child, be careful," or "Mind, watch what could happen." It normally, not always, comes in the form of a warning. And then you have a dream or prophecy. So when y'all get into grade 12, if you learn any of Shakespeare's readings, or you would see that he uses prophecy quite a bit to foreshadow what can happen in the play at a later date and time. It's a very common thing that's used. So, Boy meets Maria Bernard. This is Josh. This is Maria Bernard. They are not related, and this is Boy the cow in the middle. Now, notice that I have meets in quotation mark. That, or quotation marks, that should give us an idea of what's going to happen next. As Boy is leaving the class and walking down the hallway, Maria Bernard, who is in grade 2, is standing, and this is the word that's used, dumbstruck, for a few seconds and runs away. This important piece of information that she's in grade 2 is very important because it kind of gives us an idea of her maturity level and her size. Cow! A cow in the school! Here we see that repetition is used. She says cow and cow twice. Then Josh speaks to Boy. Josh says, "You were great. You made a lot of friends today, but you frightened that little girl, and the worst part may yet come." This is the foreshadowing. The fact that the little girl was frightened, and the worst part may yet come, as evidenced by what is going to happen later on. So he warned the boy that foolishness, or hocus pocus as he puts it, another idiom, is not tolerated at school. He gives boy some grass and he puts him outside under the school, which was built on concrete pillars. Therefore, the school was at least 5 feet off the ground and at its highest point. Now, here's what we need to know, okay? Josh, when he first came to school, put boy on the side of the school. He was not trying to hide him. After this, and after his meeting with Maria Bernard, boy was placed underneath the school, which clearly indicates that Josh did not want boy to be seen. And again, Josh did not tie boy down. So we can already see that this cow or this calf who has all of this freedom may just present a problem for Josh in the future. Now, Josh and his tricky self tells a lie of omission. While Josh had boy obediently seated outside, Maria had cried to her second grade teacher, Mrs. Redmond, about what she saw. So Mrs. Redmond came outside to investigate, and Josh bumped into her as he excitedly went back to class. Mrs. Redmond was described as being as solid as a wooden barrel and shaped like one. Again, we see another example of characterization. This narrator, or Josh, he is describing the way that this woman looks. So we learn about her looks based on what Josh says. Now, she questions Josh, and because she asks him about seeing a cow in particular, he had said that there were no cows in the school. And Josh, speaking to himself, and you can go to this page. Let me double check the page number because I forgot to put it on the slide. Josh knows that he is wrong. And so Josh on page 27 and on page 28, he uses this as an excuse that he is referring to a bulkin and not an actual cow. And that is the problem, okay? As a matter of fact, Mrs. Redmond, she spells out to him, yes, a cow, C-O-W, cow. That's a form of alliteration. And Josh says to her explicitly, plainly, I didn't see a cow, ma'am. Because in Josh's mind, his trickster mind, he only saw a bulkin. And that is different from a cow. This is showing you just how disingenuous Josh can be when he wants to stay out of trouble. So he justifies the lie to himself. Now, when Josh returns to class, Tony Kelly asks Josh about boy's whereabouts. And Josh says he put him under the school. The class learns the difference between the names of cow based on the age and the gender. Josh is given a grade A for his report. And even while in class, Josh hopes that boy stays put or stays in place, but wishes that he could closely control boy's whereabouts. However, knowing that boy does not stay tied down, knowing that boy has followed Josh to school 2 times, and on the 3rd time, Josh was forced to bring boy to school, we know what will happen next. Boy's current actions were already foreshadowed when he followed Josh to school twice, and foreshadowed when, well, Maria Bernard bumped into him. So here we go. Boy comes back into the school. Now, Josh did not know until there was an uproar in the halls. And when he opened the door and ran outside, he knew that it was boy causing the problem, because boy had come back into the school. And so we end today's story here. Today we learned about foreshadowing. We also learned about characterization, the way that the characters think, the way that they act, the way that they look, how we learn about the characters. So please review the information in this presentation so that you're prepared to answer any questions that I or your individual teacher may ask you on the subject. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Miss Johnson, and please don't forget that this presentation is based on the novel A Cow Called Boy by C. Everard Palmer, published by Macmillan Caribbean, the 1985 edition. The content is not for sale and is being used specifically for commentary and as an educational resource. The graphics were made and sourced in Canva. Please, guys, just take your time and know that this information may be a bit different from what your teacher presents, but it's being used as a study guide to introduce you to the novel and elements of a novel. Have a great day.